Hello and welcome to the LSU Baseball Tournament Update brought to you by Hancock Whitney. I'm Patrick McGee, joined by Wilson Alexander, who's in Omaha for a game that's going to decide it all. 6 o'clock tonight, we've got LSU and Florida playing for the national championship. It was a weird one yesterday in a whole variety of ways, but obviously the big number that Florida hung, it was a final score of 24-4. Wilson, what was kind of your feel for the LSU baseball team after last night's game, and what you're kind of thinking coming into today?
Dylan Cruz said in the post-game press conference, everybody in our locker room has already forgotten about it. Was that actually true? Like 10, 15 minutes after the game? Probably not quite. But the general message from him and Gavin Dugas, who are two of these teams' leaders and guys that you rely on, was that they aren't going to be too concerned about it. It might have been actually somewhat advantageous for LSU to be able to almost throw the second half of that game out the window, and just not worry too much about it. Obviously, the score just got completely out of hand. But by the sixth inning or so, LSU was throwing guys who were not going to be pivotal relievers in this series. Not someone who they would have pitched if the game was close at hand. So, now they've got full strength in their pitching staff going into Game 3 with, Thatcher Hurd is starting tonight. Griffin Herring would be available. I believe Riley Cooper would be available. He had a stomach illness yesterday, our Leah Van reported, but he was able to, he's on the bus and with the team here today. And then Paul Skeens, the big question being around whether or not he's going to throw, but he's potentially in that mix as well. And so it seems like, the thing about baseball, as terrible as yesterday was for LSU, that was the most lopsided loss in College World Series finals history. Florida scored more runs than any team ever had at the College World Series. It doesn't have to affect today. If they can flush it and regroup, then they can still win a national championship tonight.
Right. Not long ago, y'all found out that Thatcher Hurd's going to be starting pitcher today. Does he feel like the right guy for this moment?
Yes, for a couple of reasons. One, he has thrown twice already in this College World Series, but neither of the outings were all that long. He came in after Paul Skeens on both days that Paul started, and so he pitched on. He's technically going on short rest here, 3 days after he last came into the game. But he didn't throw but I think it was 3 innings in that Thursday win over Wake Forest, about 50 or so pitches. So you can probably get a little bit of length out of him tonight. If Thatcher Hurd can go into the 4th inning, and then you're able to pitch, after him, the guys we already talked about, and that sets up pretty well for LSU on the mound. If he is somebody who's been pretty good here in the postseason in particular, ever since really the SEC tournament in Georgia and kind of near the end of the regular season. He's been a reliable guy for you. He's going to have to contend with some wind blowing out to right field tonight. LSU's been so good at pitching to this ballpark throughout this tournament, but that wind has shifted over the last 2 days. But Thatcher still feels like the right choice to give you a little bit of length at the start of the game and keep this thing close before you turn it over to some of those bullpen arms. If LSU, particularly Skeens, if LSU has a lead.
Right. Skeens threw, I think, 120 pitches last time out. I know Jay Johnson hasn't ruled him out, hasn't really commented on whether he's going to go to him. But do you think if they do get him out there in relief, how much do you think they can get out of him?
Paul Skeens has now thrown 243 pitches in 2 starts over the last week. So not going to be a ton. Of course, you've got a future for him to think about here as well. But he's going to, I'm sure, want the ball at some point if there's a logical place for him to take it. And so I would expect him to probably go 2 or 3 innings if LSU can get to that. It's almost reminiscent of 2009. LSU, Lewis Coleman, their ace that year, started Game 1 and was able to come back in Game 3 and record the last few outs there, the last couple innings, in order to seal that 11-4 victory that gave LSU the national championship, and the last one, since last one they won. And so Skeens, maybe can be able to do that for you. Don't expect him, of course, to go very, very long into the game, but especially if LSU has a lead in the 7th or the 8th. And LSU, they want to try to protect that. Paul Skeens is probably the perfect person to come in, give you 40 pitches in 2 or 3 innings, and maybe close something out.
Sunday's game, do you kind of chalk it up as just being baseball one of those days, or did we just see a Florida lineup that's just kind of doesn't have many weak points in it at this point in the season?
A combination of the two. Florida's lineup really hadn't done a whole lot to be impressed by for most of this College World Series. They scraped through in some one-run games to get here. They were on the weaker side of the bracket. And they weren't very good in the first game against LSU, and then everything clicked, especially with the top of the lineup. Wyatt Langford, their star, had 5 hits. That was a record. They even started getting a little bit near the end of the game from Josh Rivera, who had really struggled against pretty simple fastballs. But he's one of their best hitters, and he started getting going. You saw what that lineup is capable of. But at the same time, it is weird in baseball. And we were saying earlier, LSU started throwing guys like Christian Little and Bryce Collins and Sam Dutton, who they had not pitched in the postseason. Bryce Collins made his first appearance in more than a month when he came in the 5th inning. And so, Florida was able to just add on against and just pile on to that score and really skew it. And they just played much better than LSU did, obviously. But it was probably a combination of those two things. Florida's lineup finally clicking and just LSU sort of throwing in the towel in a way in the last half of the game.
Florida's going with the lefty Caglione. No, LSU this season has had some issues with good left-handed pitching. What do you think about the way LSU stacks up against this guy?
Yeah, Jock is, he was a finalist for the Golden Spikes. He's a two-way player. They call him Jock Tani, almost like Shohei Ohtani, because of his ability to play in the field and pitch as well. And so, the lineups aren't out yet. We don't know if LSU has made any sort of adjustments in its lineup because of the left-handed pitcher. But I would expect them, to go with what has gotten them here and not really make too many variations and don't overreact to what happened yesterday just because that was one game and it doesn't have to affect this one. And so, we'll just see how it matches up. Jock's been good at times and shaky at others, and LSU has done a really good job over the last 2 days in particular about getting into Florida's bullpen. They were able to get Hurston Waldrop out of the game really early yesterday, which seemed like a fantastic positive sign right at the beginning of the game, and then obviously that did not end up holding up. But they did it in game 1 as well. They're still going to have to contend with some of Florida's best relievers if they're able to do that, but that's the formula, would get Jock out of the game on the mound anyway, pretty early.
Is there anything that you're specifically looking for, say, early in this game or throughout the game? What's got to happen for LSU for this to kind of turn around in the course of 24 hours?
Timely hits. It all comes down to that, I think, today, because that is an area where LSU has struggled here, really throughout the College World Series, but particularly over the last 2 days, it's been glaring. LSU, had that great walk-off, not walk-off, but go-ahead hit from Cade Beloso in the first game of this series, but it really shouldn't have taken that to get to that point. There was 17 runners left on base. They were 0 for 3 with bases loaded in the game 1. They had stranded another 13 yesterday, 0 for 3 again with the bases loaded. So that's now 0 for 6 with the bases loaded and 30 runners left on base over 2 games. LSU's got to be able to come through with some timely hits. The complexion of yesterday's game could have been completely different if they had done that early, and they weren't able to. So that's a big key for me here. And what the game comes down to is if LSU can come through with those timely hits with runners in scoring position, and instead of just trying to rely on some home runs, but actually just advance and move guys around, then they're going to have a really good chance to win the game.
Okay. Well, we'll see how things play out. It all comes down to this game tonight, 6 o'clock, LSU and Florida playing for the national championship. This has been the LSU Baseball Tournament Update brought to you by Hancock Whitney. I appreciate you joining us, Wilson, and Leah has been with us along the way as well. We appreciate all y'all's good work in Omaha and hope everything goes well tonight.
Thanks, Patrick.